Hi everybody, this is chapter 4 of the Poston text. You're going to find this is the longest of the presentations that we're going to be doing, that we're going to be looking at in this particular chapter. We're looking at budgeting for financial prudence and productivity. So this chapter is really going to look at institutional budgeting needs and how they're similar to educational organizations and school budgeting. School budgeting has more stakeholders, and I go back to that whole, you've heard me say teachers are narcissists concepts, but every single stakeholder in education in schools think they know everything more than other organizations. Everybody has a better way to work things. So when you have institutional practices in budgeting and you move them over to school budgeting, this creates this kind of disconnect. We're going to look at some other research on budgeting strategies and how those can work or not work in education. I am an organizational theorist, and I think that's important to know. When you know and understand an organization, you have a better chance of meeting those objectives. If you spend a lot of time in your district, you know where to cut. I would come into a district and I would say I would cut program A, B, C, and D without knowing the district, and that can cause problems. You have to know the organization and know the culture, and the longer you do, you know what the expendable areas are. So, public institutional budgeting needs. We have more problems with school practices where, everybody wants to know where every dollar is going. And because schools are public institutions and taxes and stakeholders are paying to them, that can create a problem. So we have to budget for implications in educational organizations in mind more than anything else, and we have to know what that looks like. So I'm going to give you some ideas that are related to that. And I'm going to talk about a few of these. Every decision should focus on change, focus, organizational harmony, what results-based looks like, and how you monitor performance. We're going to talk about, we've talked about some of these already. We're going to talk about a lot of these in Chapter 9 and Chapter 10. But I want to talk about organizational harmony and monitoring performance because those are big ideas, those are important, and those are something that you have to take into consideration. I come from an early childhood framework as well, and you know that children are resilient to change. They understand change, they adjust to it, they suffer through it in the beginning, but eventually they get used to it. Adults are not. When budgeting decisions are made, you have to understand how those budgeting decisions impact organizational harmony. If you tell children that are in a class size of 16, you're going to have 24 kids in your class next year, some might be upset because they get less of individualized attention. But they're going to say, okay, that's more friends I can make. You tell that to an adult, they're going to think that's more work that I have to do. They're not going to be as resilient as children are. So if you know the organization, you can make those changes and you know how it's going to impact it. But if you come in as an outsider, which a lot of you are going to do as central administrators, and you're going to have to make these tough decisions, you're going to change things that you saw in one organization that might not be the case in another. I keep using the art example because it's, I'm going to go back to that. I'm going to cut somewhere, I'm cutting art, I know I can afford to do it, and I know that it's something that would work. What if I go to a district that had, what if I went to the place where Andy Warhol went to high school at? I'm not going to be able to cut art there, and if I try to do that, they're going to think I'm an idiot. So you have to know the organization, and you have to know where you would cut and what that cut would exactly look like. So how do you monitor performance? All clientele have to be notified of why these budgeting decisions are. School communities have to know, the boards have to know, but remember what I keep saying, you have to do two things. Number one, you have to relate it back to students. I'm cutting this so that this benefits this group of students. This is that whole notion of utilitarianism. You're benefiting the most people. And number two, remember, you are not here to make friends. We're in a human services organization, but you're the superintendent and you have to do what's in the best interest of your organization. You have to be transparent, and you need to make sure that people know what you're doing and what that looks like. So we're going to go over what the categories of productivity improvement look like and how they can or could impact school organizations. So revenue enhancement is, it's how you can make money for the district and use it elsewhere. And I'll give you some suggestions on what you can do to make money in your school district. Cash reserves are huge. If you have the opportunity to save money when you can and have a kitty, that's good. If you have an educational foundation, meaning you're going to put somebody's name on something and say this is, this is the John Doe Scholarship and their foundation, that's going to help you as well. If you can share facilities with other community organizations, it gets the community more involved. Or if you can even share them with a neighboring school district, that can be a good thing too. If you have outside third parties, I know that's outsourcing, but that can help as well. Maybe for your district it will, maybe it won't, I don't know. The fee structures for optional program enrollments. The girls lacrosse program that's just a blast and fun. That could be an outside organization. Back from where I'm from, our big one was hockey. Hockey's extremely expensive. There are liability insurance, equipment costs, and we had fee structures built in for hockey even though it was an affluent school district. If there's correct outside funding, that's good. If you can recruit tuition students, meaning people that want to pay to go to the district, I say open the doors to them. That's the charter school choice in me coming out. Some of you might not think that way, but I say if you want people to want to pay to go to your district, let them pay. If they can afford it, that's glorious. And have an investment program and have the right people guiding and helping with investments when possible. So, we'll talk a little bit about each one of these. I kind of gave you the overview. You can read these on your own, but understand that most school systems don't have money. They're in debt. They have bond indentures. I'm going to spend an entire chapter talking about what to do with bonds because the schools have to borrow money. If you can save money, you don't have to spend it. If you have a cash reserve, you can use the money when the system needs it the most and when the organization changes. Ed foundations are huge in higher education, and you can use that to improve the school, but you have to make sure you don't want to give it unwanted control to stakeholders who don't deserve to have it. My high school was Coca-Cola Stadium, and that impacted a lot in our district. So keep that in mind. Did it give the school money? Yeah, and it helped. But it lowered our taxes, but it would cost. You got to determine what those costs look like. If you can share facilities like tennis courts, swimming pools, those are the most common ones. That reduces total cost and it reduces the notion of having a community-based system. Outside third parties. I think the key one is childcare. If you can find a way where the school system can have a childcare facility in place, it can give good parent and community relations. It can give your 10th, 11th, and 12th graders the opportunity to interact with children in a safe, insured environment. And then the school can show how they can serve the community. And that can make the district functional and successful, and it can also increase tax revenue as well, which is huge. Some programs are not vital to students. Number one that our textbook suggests you start charging is driver's education. If you want to take driver's ed, the students need to pay because that costs the district money. The one that I mentioned was hockey in the Northeast. Hockey costs the district money. Women's lacrosse costs the district money. They are important programs, but they can cost the school district money. But if it's in the culture and tradition of the school district, you come from the district where Wayne Gretzky's kids went to, where Mario Lemieux's children went to. I actually lived 15 minutes from the district where Mario Lemieux's kids went to. They're not going to cut hockey in that school district. So you have to understand if that's embedded in the culture before you start adding fees in. So supplemental outside funding. If you can have a grant writer, if you can hire somebody to write grants that can secure funding, that's good. But once again, you have to remember what that money goes to and what that priority goes to. The grant writer in the district, and some of you are grant writers, you should not be overshadowed by people that aren't the grant writer that's in the same department. And then you have to watch who gets the control when you're writing grants as well. That's another organizational challenge that can occur as well. So tuition, students, the big thing is your fringe districts. If you're next to an urban school and kids are living in an urban school and the parents want to pay money to send them to suburban schools, I support it. I think it's great. But some people might be against it. I think that's a discretionary thing on your behalf. What I think is good might be different than what you think is good. The Brimley textbook really talked about investments, but you have to have somebody in charge that knows what they're doing, and I agree with that completely. So We're going to talk about expenditure reduction a little bit, how the district can be proactive in explaining how we can save programs and save money. I want to stress that if you can show that there are targeted reductions that benefit the district, you can gain support, and if you can do it in a strategic plan. If I know right now that my enrollment is going to go down by 20% and I say that in the next 10 years I need to cut 20% of my teachers, I'm not going to hire teachers. And that's good, because if I hire teachers, I then in turn have to fire teachers. I don't want to do that. I would rather set my district up to know what the projections look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And yes, you can get that information. You know how many parents are giving birth and are living in the district. You know how quickly property is growing and developing in the district. So you can make those judgments, and you can make them based on a context that exists. So show what the targeted reductions look like and how they benefit the school district. So we're going to go over these. These are all of our potential positive reductions that can help. So staffing is number one. Tell teachers point blank, you might not be teaching second grade, third grade, or fourth grade every single year, and you might be a moving and traveling teacher and change your grades. Be transparent, tell them that in the beginning. That way they know that it's a possibility and it's coming. Other thing that I would suggest doing, those are the people that live in the district. If I'm going to hire somebody that has to be the moving teacher, I'm going to make sure that I tell them that in the first place, and it's somebody who's already invested in the community, invested in the school district, because I can do that with them. The building doesn't have to always have 5 third grade teachers. The building doesn't always have to have 10 ninth grade English teachers. If you strategically plan, you can prepare for this, and that makes the most sense. So if you have to consolidate facilities, that's a good thing. Transportation costs are less than faculty, but if you can consolidate and the bus ride ends up being 2 or 3 minutes longer, but yet instead of sending out 10 buses, you're sending out 8, that's a cost you can cut. And you can keep money you can keep the faculty happy, and you can cut transportation. Where I am from, sharing happens on the 3 following educational specialist positions. These are individuals that are normally subcontracted out between school districts, meaning they're not regularly there. In my experience, it has been school psychologists, hearing support, and then librarians. Some districts, the librarian works between 2 or 3 districts. If you hire individuals that will do this, pay them more money. Give them more responsibilities, but pay them more money, and then they're likely to stay. They'll rise to the challenge, they'll do what's expected, but they need to be compensated for it. Construction, we've said this a million times, and I've talked about this in the Guthrie text. If you're smart enough to plan construction, you have a much better chance of maximizing what can be accomplished. It's also strategic planning. You do this with the interest of students and facilities in mind, and you accommodate space where and when is necessary. So school closure, I've lived through this before moving through Oklahoma, and it's common. We talk about mergers all the time. We talk about school consolidation. Oklahoma, it's happening for different reasons than it is in Pennsylvania and Ohio. We're closing. Oklahoma has growing areas and pocketed areas of growth that people just don't know what to do with them. And because of it, it's looking differently than it is in Pennsylvania and Ohio. Here, when a population increases, what we say is we're going to keep the community school, but we're going to create an 8th grade center or a 9th grade center. We don't redistrict here, and I don't understand why yet. I haven't figured it out yet. If we did that in Pennsylvania and Ohio, we redistrict, we close a facility, and then we grow another one. I think the way that the culture of this state is, you're going to see more of the academy school and a comprehensive school in the next 5 to 10 years, just because that's the culture that's been embedded and built in. So if you have to refinance, you refinance. If you get a better interest rate, you get a better interest rate. If you do it for your house, why can't you do it for a school facility? If you have a bond and you can reduce the interest rate, you reduce the interest rate, and it shows that you're preparing for the future. That's a no-brainer. So energy costs. I am shocked that the state has not moved to mandatory Fridays off. I expected that, especially in the summer, but we don't. Air conditioning in homes in Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Texas is really, really tough. You could reduce energy costs 8 to 10% if you took a model where you gave principals, superintendents, and district employees, instead of giving them 4 weeks vacation or 3 weeks vacation, cut their vacation by a week and give them 8 to 10 Fridays off and tell them those are mandatory during the summer. Employee satisfaction would increase because those would be 3-day weekends, and you would save 8 to 10% on energy costs. We're not doing it here. I don't get it. It's the #1 thing I would change in terms of saving money and reducing costs in a district. We're not doing it here. I don't get it. Some operational efficiencies. There are 3. We have cooperatives, whole operations, and wage and benefit constraints, and we're going to talk briefly about these. When we have whole operation privatization, that means that payroll, human resources, benefits, and management are operated by private firms. This is scary. If the people don't understand education and what an educational system looks like, you're going to have problems. So you need to make sure these are experienced individuals that understand education. Remember what I said about the dream business manager. Bachelor's degree in accounting or finance, master's in education, or bachelor's degree in education, master's degree in accounting and finance. Same can be said about privatization of operations. Cooperatives. This is the first step to emerge. A lot of these districts in the state can merge. It's not going to happen, but they could. You share facilities, you share organizations, you share transportations. The key one here is going to be athletic facilities. If this can benefit the school district and reduce costs, everybody wins. That's cooperative. So wage and benefit constraints. Most people don't want to hear this, but it's the truth. Most people would rather have a wage freeze than losing employees. If you have to do this, you have to say that you did it to save jobs and save money and protect people, and you can get away with that in education. Most people would rather have a wage freeze. I believe in cutting the dead wood but I believe in not doing it based on seniority. I believe in doing it based off of, if you can afford to get rid of somebody, that 85-year-old individual who's been a professor for 55 years, who's ready to call it quits on their career, but she's still riding off into the sunset. You could do a lot of good cutting them versus, the young upstart who's doing a lot to change and help the organization. That's my belief. Most people would rather take wage freezes. You decide what you want. So, a couple of things to end the chapter. Abandonment and restructuring. We're going to talk about abandonment later. This is when you just cut everything. My belief is grandfather organizations out, strategic planning. Give it 4 years, say we're getting rid of the high school, but everybody gets to graduate from it. Restructuring is when you say a counselor's only going to be in the building Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The library is only going to open Tuesdays and Thursdays. It can save the district money, and that's a worst case scenario, but it's something that you need to think about. So a couple of quick things on system productivity, then we're done with this chapter. Understand that you have to have financial parameters in place, and you need to show what they are for the fiscal year. Oklahoma, our fiscal year is July 1st to June 30th, and that's different than the school year, and I know that and I realize that. Budget proposals have to show basically what the planned objective is and what the actual objective is and how that was met or how it wasn't met. You have to be transparent. You have to make sure that there's independent data that's objective within your organization and it doesn't hit a political statute. When we go over the Lewis text, you're going to see a lot of political things can happen in the state that you can get away with that wouldn't be the case in other states. But if that happens, then there becomes this issue of cronyism, and that sort of approach isn't necessarily a good thing. So the next chapters, 5 and on, will look at the budgeting process and what theory looks like. My belief is that exposure is the key, so try to take this and look at it more than anything else to find out, what you could use and what you can't use. That's it for this chapter. Thank you.